Is anyone else tired of living through unprecedented times and could use at least a few weeks of precedented times? Well, if so, then you probably aren't alone. I know I feel that way, and I see so many other people online echoing the same thing. But all jokes aside, over the last 5 years, there have been a seemingly endless stream of breaking news, major world events, catastrophic disasters, so many things that have gone wrong. And I'm not here to be like a doomsday person or to just talk about the negatives, but I hear from people all the time, hey, how do you handle this? How do you go about it as a business owner who's posting on social media, who many of us have a pretty significant influence? Even just 1,000 followers is a significant influence. How do you go about it? How do you handle it? How do you address it? Do you address it? Today in this episode, I'm going to be very transparent, and I'm going to admit that as we go into this episode, I'm likely going to make some mistakes, and a few years from now, I might look back on this episode and disagree with some of these things, but I wanted to share with you my opinions, not about recent political events or recent world catastrophes and recent world breaking news, but my opinions about how to handle these things on social media as someone with an influence. You might not consider yourself an influencer, but as someone who's posting regularly on social media, as someone with more than one follower, you have an influence. And so today I'm going to talk to you about some things that I personally consider and how I choose to address and handle or not address certain things that are happening in the world when it pertains to my own business and social media. And I want to start by saying that I am a believer that there isn't necessarily a right and a wrong way to go about things. We all are different people with different backgrounds, with different businesses, with different audiences and different seasons of our life, with different amounts of followers, right? And so the way that you handle something might be different than someone else. And I don't want you to feel pressure or shame or guilt for doing or not doing something. Ultimately, you should do what is in your and the people you care about's best interest. And I don't want you to necessarily feel like, oh, because someone else posted about something, now you have to, or because someone else didn't post about something, you're not allowed to. I don't think that there's necessarily a right or a wrong when it comes to handling these unprecedented times, these major breaking news, major world catastrophes on social media. But with all of that being said, I made a list of about 12 different things that I consider, that I would recommend that you consider the next time something crazy happens in the world and you're wondering, what should you do on your social media? Should you still post stories? Should you release that podcast? Should you still post about your upcoming launch? Let's talk about it. First and foremost, I think the best thing that any of us can do is to pause, to take a deep breath. Oftentimes, when something crazy, chaotic happens in the world, you're instantly made aware of it. You open up your social media and every single post is talking about it. Everyone has their own opinion. Everyone has their own latest breaking news that adds onto the story. It can feel chaotic. It can fuel anxiety. It can cause people to have panic attacks. And so one of the best things that you can do is to pause. And oftentimes that literally means put the phone down. I don't believe that we as human beings are evolved to the point where we are at the capacity to be able to handle the inundation of news and headlines that we see throughout the day. I mean, think back to just 100 years ago. Your news for the day was like what your coworkers or family were telling you, maybe what you read in a newspaper, maybe what you listened to on the radio, but that's about it. You didn't have this news box in your pocket that was just pinging you all day long with the latest catastrophe in world news and the latest dire situation that's happening on every single corner of the globe. And in some ways, that it's an amazing thing because we're able to care about these things happening all over the world. We're able to spread awareness and we're able to help each other out across a global network, but it also can be very draining for our emotional load and our mental state and even our physical health. So first and foremost, what I always try to do and what I recommend you do is just pause, just take a deep breath. Even if that means, if it's possible for you, putting your phone down and going for like a 10-minute walk, or, disconnecting from social media or the internet, or turning off the news for a little bit. And also I want to pause myself right now and say that this entire conversation is a very privileged conversation to be having, because we're thinking about like, how do we run our business? What do we post on social media when something crazy is happening in the world? But to the people who the crazy stuff is happening to, they don't have the privilege of thinking about, oh, am I going to post on stories today? I recognize that. I just also think that this podcast is dedicated for business owners, for people who want to grow and monetize on social media. And also, I think that breaking news ain't ever going to slow down anytime soon. I don't think that we are heading towards a season of peace and quiet in the world. I wish we were, but I don't think we are. And so I think it's important that as business owners, as people with an influence, we talk about ways that we can move forward and ways that we can prepare for unprecedented times, which are becoming kind of the norm. Number two, educate yourself. And on one hand, that's very easy to do because you have the internet at your fingertips. But at the other hand, that's very challenging to do because the internet isn't always the most reliable source of information. But from what I've found, it's the best first step after pausing is to try to educate yourself, to learn about all sides of the story, to learn the facts, to read as much as you can, to watch analysts, and to just learn and educate yourself so you're at the bare minimum fully aware or close to fully aware of the full story. Number three, decide on the relevance of said event to you, your niche, your business, and your audience. Let me give you an example. It was headline news when the United States Congress pushed through and passed a bill that was effectively, quote unquote, banning TikTok. That is relevant to me and my audience and my niche because I teach social media. So that is a form of breaking news, something that's a headline that I probably should talk about or that my audience is curious about. It's relevant to me and my audience and my niche. There are plenty of other things, probably 99% of what's happening in the news, that isn't relevant to me or my niche or my audience. Now, if something is relevant to you, your niche, or your audience, then it's probably something that you're going to want to make a post about, you're going to want to chime in on, or at least you're going to want to address in some way. And I want to say, not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but sometimes addressing the thing can mean not making any other posts or pausing all of your scheduled posts for at least a short period of time. We'll talk more about that later. But number four is, if you decide that the breaking news, the thing, whatever, is not relevant to you or your niche or your industry, like it's not really pertaining to your business, but it's still something you want to talk about, something you want to comment on, something you want to share your beliefs about, something that you want to amplify, or something that you just want to put your own 2 cents in on, ask yourself, and this is a great question, this came from a friend of mine, ask yourself, is this a hill that I'm willing to die on? Like, is this something that you're willing to go to bat for? Is this something that you believe in so strongly that you're willing to lose followers or piss people off or lose business because of? And if it's not, if it's something that you don't feel strongly about, then maybe you hold off on posting about it. Tip number five is something that I saw someone say on Threads, and I thought, wow, that is so good. Like, I'm actually doing that myself. And it was to revisit planned/scheduled posts. Oftentimes we are scheduling posts a week or maybe even a few weeks or maybe even a few months in advance. And so it's important to just revisit anything that you have scheduled. And this includes all social media, any YouTube videos, podcasts, even emails that you have scheduled to be sent out. Revisit them and just make sure that they all make sense. Make sure that they are all still appropriate. I can think of an example if, I'm making a reel about saying, shoot or shoot, you got to shoot your shot. And it's important when you're, if you want to get a social media brand deal, you got to pitch yourself and you got to shoot your shot. You got to put yourself out there. You got to reach out to the brands that you want to work with. And maybe that's the hook I'm using, like shoot your shot, shoot or shoot. That would be very insensitive following an assassination attempt on a former president, right? And so it's important that we all just check our scheduled content, make sure it's appropriate, make sure that anything that we're saying fits into the current narrative, the current time. Maybe if there's something major going on and like everyone is paying attention to one thing on social media for the day, maybe you're going to postpone your sales post. Maybe you're going to postpone that kind of, on the line kind of meme that you were planning that's maybe a little bit, it's kind of, on the border of what you would normally post and, where your humor would usually go. Maybe you're going to delay that to a different time or a future date. Tip number 6 is really just another thing to consider. And that is that you have to understand anytime that you post your opinion online, there will be people who not only disagree, but probably vocally disagree and might even come at you. They might make posts about you. They might leave nasty comments. They might send you mean direct messages. That's definitely the worst case scenario, but it's something that you need to consider. And so again, thinking about like, is this a hill I'm willing to die on? Is this something that is so important to me that I'm willing to deal with that backlash and that negativity and that criticism and that amount of people who are blocking me and or unfollowing me and or canceling their business with me. Like, is this thing that important to me? And if it is, and if you do plan to make a post about whatever the thing is, just know what comes with it, right? Know what to expect, know what to get yourself ready for. And part of getting yourself ready might mean that you're not going to engage in the comments. You're not going to argue with people. You're not going to answer direct messages. Maybe you're going to turn off the comments altogether. Maybe you're going to turn off your direct messages altogether. Maybe you are going to mute your phone after making said post and you're going to walk away from social media for a day or two. Prepare in advance different ways so that you can just be ready for, the impending negativity or pushback that you might receive. Tip number 7 is a specific one, but it is to use content warnings. So if you are making a post that involves violence or it involves blood or it's about, an eating disorder or it's about whatever thing, whatever sort of trauma, give some sort of content warning just so that people are aware of what they're about to see. You don't want to accidentally upset someone or trigger someone or show a child something that they weren't ready for or show someone something that is very upsetting to them. Maybe they are a military veteran and they've come home from war, and so when they see blood it triggers PTSD for them. And so you just want to give a warning that, hey, this is the kind of content I'm about to post about. If the kind of content you're about to post about has something traumatic or graphic in it. Content warnings can make a big difference. Tip number 8 is something that is extremely important, and that is that I am against capitalizing on tragedy for your own social media personal gain. I saw a lot of people, and I don't shame anyone who does this, but I saw quite a few people over this past weekend who were immediately posting memes and making jokes about things that had happened. And regardless of how you feel, regardless of where you stand politically, when people die, I don't believe that that is the opportunity for you to make a quick meme to get some more views on Instagram. That, in my opinion, is in bad taste. I'm not trying to shame them. I'm not trying to, say that any of those people are bad people. But that's not something that I would do. And that's not something that I would recommend that you do. If you're listening to this podcast week after week and you're someone who takes our advice and you call yourself a Build Your Tribe listener, then I hope that the influence I can have on you is that you're not going to try to take advantage of national, catastrophic, worldwide headlines for your own social media gain. Tip number 9 is to engage in meaningful conversations. And I say that with a big asterisk because I recognize that the vast majority of conversations happening on social media at the time that there is a major traumatic world news headline event are not productive conversations. They are arguments where both sides walk away pissed off and offended and upset, and neither side has necessarily gained or learned anything. So I hope that we can all be an agent of change, myself included. And when something crazy happens, instead of jumping into comment sections to debate and argue and get upset with other people for disagreeing, we can instead have either private conversations or peaceful public conversations that lead to knowledge and growth and learning. Tip number 10 is that if you are going to post, you should probably consider offering some sort of support or resources, some ways that people can do their own education and they can learn for themselves, or ways that people can donate, or ways that people can help support. Offering resources like that can be very helpful so that you aren't positioning yourself as the only person to go to. You are just another person facilitating other people to hopefully also grow and learn and educate and maybe even donate or support. Tip number 11 is to find your own unique balance. And again, all of this is subjective. All of this is open to your own personal opinions and interpretation, but find a balance that works for you. I think that it's silly to shut down all social media, depending on what the news is. Like if the world is ending, maybe it doesn't matter to post a reel, but depending on what the news is, it probably doesn't make sense to just shut down all social media for the next 6 months. But it maybe also doesn't make sense to go 6 months without addressing that news. So find the balance that works for you. Find the middle ground that can work to both keep your audience happy, keep your business afloat, but also maintain your own integrity and being able to talk about the things that truly matter to you. 12th, definitely last but not least, is communicate internally. I hear from a lot of content creators and business owners that oftentimes they forget to communicate with their teams during this time. The people who you are paying, the people you're working with, your independent contractors, your staff members, your copywriters, your content designers, your editors. It's important to check in with these people, to communicate with them, to make sure that you're all on the same page, that you are a united front. And then if you are making changes as the business owner, that you're communicating it with them and that they are aware of what's going on. Ultimately, to put a bow on this somewhat ugly package, I want to just conclude by reiterating that there is no right and wrong. And everything I've shared today is my opinion. I'm sure it will change. And I'm sure some people listening disagree with some things that I said today. And I'm sure you'll let me know in the comments on YouTube. But I recognize that there isn't necessarily a perfect solution. There isn't a solution where everyone is going to be happy. And I think that's something that you need to recognize as well, is that no matter what the event is, no matter what niche you're in, no matter how many followers you have, there is unlikely to be a solution that is perfect for everyone, that works for everyone and makes everyone happy. So I want to just say thank you so much for listening today. And I would love to hear from you in the comment section on YouTube. Hopefully, even if you do disagree, you can leave some sort of constructive comment, one where we can all have like a healthy dialogue and just learn from each other and hear everyone else's opinion in the comments, because this is a sticky situation. And this is something that a lot of people are scared to talk about. And admittedly, this is something that I have been scared to talk about for many months on this podcast, because I get messages all the time. Whenever the next chaotic world news happens, whenever the next traumatic thing breaks, and people come asking like how they should handle it, or if I can do a podcast talking about how I'm going to handle it. And it's something that I've been kind of nervous to talk about, because I know it's something that is going to make some people angry, and it's going to probably lose some subscribers of this podcast. So I'd love to hear from you in the comments section on YouTube, to just kind of check in and see how everyone else is feeling, how you as a listener feel about today's episode, and how you, maybe even this would be a good prompt of something you could lead your comment off with, is to comment how you handle breaking news and world events. Thank you so much for listening today. And as always, happy networking.